Today in Movie Notion, I'm going to be reviewing Disney's movie adaptation of Artemis Fowl and help you decide if you should watch it or not. Welcome to Movie Notion, a channel designed to help you with your movie watching decisions. We do the research so you don't have to. Today, I will be talking about the movie Artemis Fowl. We will jump right into a review of the film so you can decide if this movie is right for your movie watching mood. Before I move on, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts with me in the comment section below, and if you find the kind of information I offer useful, click on the subscribe button and enable notifications. Artemis Fowl is a 2020 American science fantasy adventure film based on the 2001 novel of the same name by Eon Colfer. It is directed by Kenneth Branagh, who has directed many films before, including Marvel's Thor. The film details the adventures of Artemis Fowl II, a 12-year-old Irish prodigy who teams up with his faithful servant, a dwarf, and a fairy to rescue his father, Artemis Fowl I, who has been kidnapped by a gang of fairies looking to reclaim an item the Fowl family has stolen. Originally intended to be a theatrical release, Artemis Fowl was released digitally worldwide on Disney Plus on June 12, 2020. I have to be honest, I watched Artemis Fowl fresh. I had no idea that the movie had been adapted from a popular series of books, so I didn't have any preconceived affinity or love for the story or characters. It was very clear to me after watching the first 10 minutes of the movie that I was not the intended target audience for this movie. It felt, well, like a Disney movie aimed at older kids and preteens. As soon as I realized that, I tried to put myself in that mind frame. I tried to see the film from the perspective of a preteen. So from that point of view, I thought the movie could be very entertaining to a 12-year-old. The movie was action-packed. It had some very interesting sci-fi and fantasy elements and plenty of characters to keep a young audience somewhat engaged. Now, changing back to the perspective of that of an adult and not seeing this movie from the perspective of a preteen, there are some other things I liked about this film, although I don't think I can attribute these things mainly to the movie, but rather the world that Eon Colfer built for his book series. I love the mixing of different elements from other stories into what I believe is a somewhat unique world. We have the fantasy elements, like goblins, trolls, fairies, dwarves, and magic, borrowed from sources like The Lord of the Rings and other English and Irish folklore sources, mixed with futuristic science fiction technology like ships, laser guns, a little bit like the technology that you would find in films like Star Wars and Starship Troopers. I also liked the way the fairies mixed technology and magic, for example in a device like the Time Stop, which was a device that stopped time in a selected area using magic. Other movies have used this mix of fantasy elements, magic, and modern technology before, in movies that are intended for an older audience. The Netflix movie Bright starring Will Smith comes to mind. Well, like I said before, I was not the intended target audience for this movie. I have never been a big fan of movies adapted from young adult book series before. However, this has been done successfully in the past. And no, I'm not talking about the Twilight movies. I am of course talking about the Harry Potter movies and the first Hunger Games movie, which were undeniably successful in the box office and a hit with critics and audiences alike. Like I said, I came fresh to Artemis Fowl without having read the books before, so I didn't have any preconceived expectations. But even without reading the books, I could tell that the world that Eon Colfer had built in his book series had so much more potential than what was being portrayed in this movie. While watching the movie, I remember thinking, man, I bet the books this thing was based on are so much better than this. And sure enough, after the movie was over, I head on over to the internet to see what fans of the books were saying about the movie, and no surprise here, they absolutely hate it. Just from reading the synopsis of each of the books in Wikipedia, I could tell that the storylines of the books are so much more interesting than what the writers and the director choose to go with in the film. Starting from the very fundamental fact that the main character of the book, Artemis Fowl II, is not a squeaky clean hero in the books, but more of a morally ambiguous criminal anti-hero. That is already radically different than the Disney-fied version of the character in the movie, and way more interesting. Besides this, there are some real clear problems with the movie itself. Considering that the intended audience for this movie are older kids and preteens, the plot of the movie is way too complicated, and the pace of the movie at times moves very fast. There are so many characters that are introduced whose storylines never go anywhere. Juliet, for example, played by Tamara Smart, was introduced at some point in the second act of the film and had about 2 lines. For the rest of the film, she was just standing around in the background, having nothing else to do with the rest of the plot. There are some bad performances as well from actors that are usually awesome. Dame Judi Dench and Josh Gad, for some reason, they both decided to do this strange low voice for their characters. Seems like an odd choice. I don't know why on earth did they both decided to do the Batman voice here, but it really doesn't work. It is no surprise that this movie was a disappointment for both critics and the audience. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 9% with the critics and 22% with the audience, a Metascore of 31% with the critics and 3.1 with the users, and an IMDb score of 4 out of 10. In my opinion, Artemis Fowl fell victim to an attempt to Disneyfy the source material. In trying to make the story too kid-friendly, they stripped it of the most interesting aspects of the world Eon Colfer built in his books. It is clear that there is a lot of potential in this universe, but Disney failed to adapt this story into a film that would not only engage young audiences, but also older audiences as well. I think that is what makes films like the Harry Potter movies and the first Hunger Games so successful. They were able to capture audiences beyond their intended target, staying somewhat true to the source material, and simultaneously satisfying book lovers and engaging newcomers to the story. Artemis Fowl fails in all those counts. It feels like a kid's movie, and so I don't think it's going to evolve into anything more than that. So for me, Artemis Fowl scores a 3 out of 10. But that doesn't mean that you should skip this movie altogether. If you have some kids and preteens at home and you want to keep them occupied for a couple of hours, then this movie might very well do the trick. Especially if you already have a subscription to Disney+. However, if you do not have a subscription to Disney+, I don't think you should consider Artemis Fowl the main reason to get one. But if you're an adult and you are in the mood to watch a movie that mixes fantasy with futuristic science fiction, stay away from this movie. You should not invest your time watching this movie. You are better off checking out Bright on Netflix if you haven't done so already. So, what did you think about Artemis Fowl? Did you read the book series before? How does the book series compare to the movie? What did you think of the movie adaptation? Well, all these things we can discuss in the comment section below. If you would like to support our show, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and watch our other videos, and check out our merch store at www.movienotion.store.